In 1978, thousands of New Yorkers entered this skyscraper each morning, unaware that welders were rebuilding its skeleton after dark. The repairs were hidden behind plywood. Offices reopened at dawn. To everyone outside, the tower looked finished. Then Hurricane Ella turned toward the coast while the secret reinforcement was still incomplete. But decades later, engineers found a second problem. The famous explanation for this crisis may itself be wrong. This is 601 Lexington Avenue, the former Citicorp Center. 59 stories, 915 feet, and impossible to miss. Its strangest feature begins at ground level, where a church occupied one corner Citibank wanted. The compromise preserved the church and gave the tower air rights above it. That forced 4 giant columns away from the corners and into the middle of each facade. The corners appeared to float, including the one above the new church. To make that possible, engineer William LeMessurier hid a steel skeleton behind the silver skin. 8 tiers of enormous V-shaped braces gathered the weight and wind forces from each face. Those braces carried the load inward, toward 4 24-foot square super columns. It was elegant, efficient, and unusually light for a tower this tall. Light towers move, so when comfort became another engineering problem. Near the roof, a 400-ton concrete block floated on oil bearings. The tuned mass damper moved against the building's sway, reducing motion, but it depended on power. 1 year after completion, LeMessurier was revisiting a similar bracing system for another project. Around the same time, an undergraduate had been asking awkward questions about Citicorp's unusual columns. What happens, the student wondered, when wind strikes a corner instead of a flat face? A corner wind pushes on 2 sides at once. Engineers call it a quartering wind. LeMessurier returned to his calculations, expecting the unconventional frame to prove itself. Instead, his analysis suggested some diagonal braces carried much larger forces than he had designed for. Then he examined a construction change inside the joints connecting those braces. The original concept used full penetration welds. The built tower used bolted connections. Bolting was a normal, approved cost-saving change, but the bolts had been sized from the original wind forces. In the conventional account, quartering winds made those bolted joints the weak link. The risk grew worse if a storm also cut power to the damper. LeMessurier's 1978 assessment produced the number that made the crisis famous: 1 chance in 16 each year. That was not a weather forecast. It was his estimate of the storm return period if the damper failed. He believed a failed connection could trigger a progressive collapse, not a graceful bend. No such collapse happened. The danger existed in calculations, and the clock was hurricane season. He now had a choice: protect his reputation or tell Citicorp that his celebrated tower needed emergency work. He called lawyers, insurers, and the architects, then presented Citicorp with a repair plan. According to his later account, the bank's executives did not argue about whether to act. The building would remain open. The neighborhood would not be publicly evacuated. Instead, crews would reinforce the vulnerable connections before a major storm arrived. The fix was brutally simple: weld heavy steel plates across the bolted joints. Roughly 200 connection locations were scheduled for reinforcement through the tower. By day, employees worked only yards from a structural emergency they had not been told about. By night, welders opened walls, exposed the braces, and sealed each joint in steel. Plywood enclosures hid sparks and debris from the offices around them. Every morning, the temporary rooms disappeared back into an apparently normal workplace. Public statements described extra bracing as a precaution, not an urgent correction. Then New York's 3 major newspapers stopped printing in an 88-day strike. The strike did not create the secrecy, but it sharply reduced the chance of sustained scrutiny. Behind the scenes, officials prepared to clear an area around the tower if the weather turned. LeMessurier later described a 10-block plan involving 2,000 Red Cross emergency workers. Backup generators were installed so the mass damper could survive a blackout. Strain gauges watched the frame, while meteorologists supplied repeated forecasts. The repair order changed with the weather. Strengthen the most valuable joints first. This was no longer one engineer fixing one mistake. It was a city-scale emergency hidden inside routine. Why not empty the building immediately? The team believed controlled repairs reduced danger without triggering panic. Critics would later argue that people exposed to the risk deserved the choice. That conflict, public safety versus public disclosure, is the real fracture running through this story. And before anyone could settle it, the Atlantic supplied a deadline. At the end of August, Hurricane Ella intensified and moved north in the western Atlantic. Its track brought it close enough to force the Citicorp team into constant weather watch. The reinforcement was still unfinished. New York was hours from a decision nobody outside the plan expected. The damper had backup power, sensors were active, and crews kept welding through the night. With every completed joint, the team recalculated how much storm the tower could withstand. Forecasts, repair charts, and evacuation decisions converged in a private war room. Then Ella turned east, away from New York. The threatened evacuation never happened. Manhattan woke under clear skies. The welders continued until October, reinforcing the tower long after the hurricane had vanished. The completed retrofit made an already innovative structure substantially stronger. And the crisis slipped out of public memory before most New York papers returned. 17 years later, Joe Morgenstern revealed the episode in The New Yorker. The story became an engineering parable. A student asks, a master checks, and integrity saves a city. It is a powerful story. It is also cleaner than the historical record. Accounts differ over what LeMessurier knew about the switch from welds to bolts and when. The student was later identified as Princeton's Diane Hartley, whose thesis contained the quartering wind concern. But the celebrated phone call chain is less direct than many retellings suggest. Then modern wind engineers tested the most important assumption behind the crisis. NIST used high-frequency data from a similarly proportioned tower and a method unavailable in 1978. Their result was the opposite of the legend. Face winds produced greater demands than corner winds. If Citicorp was safe for face winds, their model suggested quartering winds would not govern, even with bolted connections. NIST did not inspect the confidential original test data. It said the retrofit rationale needs re-examination. So both facts remain. The 1978 team believed the danger was urgent, and modern analysis questions why. The dispute concerns the old calculation, not a present-day warning. The strengthened tower still stands over Lexington Avenue. The next archive is already open. The Town America placed 60 feet underwater. Continue with 60 feet under.